Hello, hello, hello. This is Chris Ferdinandi from GoMakeThings.com. And today I wanted to talk to you about how to use the Shadow DOM and the Light DOM inside the same web component. If you've been following my channel for a while, you probably know that I hate the Shadow DOM. I think it's an anti-pattern. Most of the time, I'm just putting everything in the Light DOM. But there are situations where it is occasionally situationally useful. I recently learned that if you do need to use the Shadow DOM for some reason, you don't have to put everything in it. You can combine the Shadow DOM and the Light DOM in a single web component. Not a lot of tutorials talk about this. They usually kind of focus on an all or nothing approach. So it was really refreshing to learn that you can use the Shadow DOM for the things you need it for and keep everything else in the Light DOM. So with that, let's dig in and take a look at what we're working with here. Just real quick along the way, as I'm talking about things, if you have any questions, comments, things you want me to talk about in a future video, please leave a comment below. That's also really helpful because it lets YouTube know that you like these videos and it will share them with more people, which is awesome. I'm also going to include all of the source code for this video down in the description below. So if you want to play around with it or try it yourself, you can. With that in mind, let's take a look at what we've got. So I have a custom count up element. And when my JavaScript loads, it is rendering a button and a div with a roll of status on it. And it includes some text that tells you the number of times that button has been clicked. So if I click this a bunch of times, you will see that that number increments up every time I click it. And if we jump back over to the text editor, let's just take a quick look at how this is working. Inside the constructor, I am defining a count attribute with an initial value of 0. I'm creating a button and giving it its text. And I'm also creating my status div and giving that some text as well, using the count property as the value for the number of times it's been clicked. I'm appending both of them into the DOM, and then I'm setting a click event listener on my button. And for this one, I'm using the handle event method feature that's built into web components. If you don't know how that works, I will drop a video, a link to video or article on that down in the description. Fingers crossed. If I remember, if I don't, please leave a comment and I'll make sure I update it. But the way this works is you pass in the instance itself instead of a callback function. And as long as that instance or object has a handle event method on it, that will run automatically whenever the event fires. And the nice thing about doing that is the handle event method maintains access to the instance, to this, so we can access that count property and our elements without having to query for them again. So inside handle event, I'm increasing my count by 1, and then I'm updating the text inside my announce element to reflect the number of times it has now been clicked. This all works great, but and it's worth mentioning, the other really nice thing about this approach is if we have global styles in our global style sheet, these elements automatically inherit them because they're in the Light DOM. So my button automatically inherits all of my global button styles. I don't have to do anything special. The problem with this is someone can also break our code in unintended ways. So for example, and I don't know why anybody would do this, but let's imagine someone set role equals status to display none. Maybe they had some other widget they'd created. They wanted to hide those things until some other class was added. They didn't realize this was being used elsewhere in like a web component somewhere because they couldn't see that code. So now when I load this page, the element is still there. The web component is still working. It's still updating that content, but the user can't see it and it won't get announced to screen reader users either. So now this web component is effectively broken. If we had put these elements inside the Shadow DOM, that global CSS wouldn't have affected them, but our button wouldn't inherit those global styles either. So we would then have to go into our web component and replicate those styles inside the component or add a bunch of hooks to let people recreate those styles in the global style sheet and bleed them in. And I'll share some links to some articles on how to do that down in the description as well. Once again, if I forget, please leave a comment. ADHD, so sometimes I say things in videos, forget to do them. So let's take a look at an approach where we can put just the stuff that needs to be in the Shadow DOM and we keep everything else in the light DOM, effectively getting the best of both worlds. I really like this approach for the situations where you need it. Most tutorials I've found kind of talk about the Shadow DOM as an all or nothing thing. I actually didn't even realize until recently you could do this. So I wanted to share it with you. So to do this, I am actually going to jump over to the Lean Web Club. This is my courses, community, and code resources platform. You can sign up for free today if you head over to leanwebclub.com. But if you join, you get access to hundreds and hundreds of courses, tutorials, resource videos, literally every course I've ever created, every reference I've ever created, talks, project ideas, and a toolkit that includes a bunch of copy-paste code. And that's the reason why we're actually here today. So in my toolkit, I'm going to scroll down to boilerplates and click on the web component boilerplate. And then I am going to copy-paste the code for creating a shadow root in our document. So inside my constructor, I'm going to create a shadow root, and we'll paste that in. In this particular case, I'm giving it a mode of closed. I want this extra secure. I don't want users to be able to access the Shadow DOM content at all. Now, where we go to append our HTML into the DOM, before we add our announcement, we're going to give our shadow root some HTML. And all we're going to drop in there is an empty slot. And then instead of appending our announce element into the main DOM, we're going to append it into the root. That's literally all we have to do. Now, if I jump back over here and reload, you can see that our count up element is now rendering a shadow root, and it's closed. And inside there, we have a slot with our button and the rest of the content that's in the Shadow DOM. And when you use the slot this way, it actually works the reverse of how it would work if you were going with a full kind of Shadow DOM approach where you had some elements already in the live HTML. So it's actually going to take this content and bump it out into the light DOM, which I think is really interesting. And so what we end up having is our count up element inherits those global styles. You can see it's styled with Rebecca purple and white, and we've got the border radius and padding. But even though role equals status is set to display none, this is still showing up because it's encapsulated in the Shadow DOM. And if I click my button, that still counts up. Now, there's a good chance you don't necessarily want this to show up in the default sans serif font and the default font size and all that. So you are going to need to add some hooks so that this can be styled or add your own styling. So you still have to deal with the kind of the shadow root concerns there, but you get around the whole, I need to do this for everything. You only have to do it for certain elements where it's important or where it matters. If you enjoyed this video, standard YouTube fodder, please give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe, share it with people you know. Anything to help spread this to more folks, because I really want to help people build a simpler, faster, more resilient web. And if you think the Lean Web Club might be interesting for you, go check that out as well. You can sign up for free today over at leanwebclub.com. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Cheers.